Meet Sylvia Ho, a lawyer who's got the legal info that business people need to know.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my office. We are doing a series on protecting your personal assets. And one of the first things that comes to mind when you own a business in terms of protecting your personal assets is insurance. So today we have Scott Prestileo from Burgess Insurance. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you very much for having me, Sylvia.
And Scott is a commercial insurance broker. And so what we're going to do today is talk about how insurance, why insurance is an important part of protecting your personal assets, how insurance does it, what types of insurances there are, as many insurances and clauses as there are in the law. Believe it or not, this is an entire field of law within the entire army of insurance lawyers. And I represent policyholders who are small businesses. And Scott will consult with his clients about what types of insurances to buy. And so therefore, this is a great place to start. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me again. Always a pleasure.
Yes, we talked about cyber liability, and we will talk about it again here in a little short tutorial on insurances. So what is commercial insurance?
Well, I mean, simply put, I mean, it depends if you're talking about property and casualty. Property and casualty is what sort of I handle, right? And that's either insuring property or it's insuring casualty, liability insurance. And it's specifically for commercial ventures or businesses. So it's just insurance that a business would purchase in order to protect their business assets.
Why would a business owner say, I'm starting out a business? Why would I need to buy commercial insurance?
So it's a great question, right? If they're starting out a business, funds are tight, they're just getting things going, why do they need to purchase insurance? And you know, they don't have to purchase the whole gambit of insurances once they start off, but they should have some very basic protections in place to protect the business, because if that business is going to grow and eventually, you know, generate revenue and purchase vehicles or equipment or assets, they're going to need to protect all of that along the way, because it's a very litigious society that we live in, correct? And if there's an accident or an injury or a mistake that's made, that business could easily go under before anything even is able to take off.
So if I had a business and someone, say I had a restaurant and someone fell down and was hurt in a slip and fall, if I didn't have that insurance and I was sued, I would have to come out of pocket to pay for my attorney's fees and also to pay for any kind of settlement. So what would an insurance in a property casualty insurance policy provide for?
Yeah, so I mean, look, a slip and fall is what most people think of, you know, when it comes to insurance. Someone comes onto your property, whether it's a restaurant, they slip, they fall, they fracture their ankle, and they sue you. If you have insurance in place, you know, it could be something as simple as a medical payment right there. Insurance policies provide for medical payments. So maybe you just call an ambulance, get the person away. Maybe it wasn't even your fault. Medical payment is a no-fault insurance payment to just take care of the injury, provide medical relief to the customer, and then that's that. But if you are at fault, right, and there is a serious injury, then your policy is going to pay to defend you because you are going to be sued, and it will pay for a judgment or a settlement against you.
So that's a classic type of property and casualty insurance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen now, and we're just going to go through some of the insurances that there are. So what we just talked about is a commercial general liability insurance, which I think I took from our notes that a package has 5 coverages: premises, operations, product liability, completed operations liability, and personal injury and advertising liability, Scott. So could you briefly describe, so we're talking about the insurance policy actually
Yeah.
paying for the lawyer to defend you,
Mhm.
and then paying the liability in any kind of settlement or trial. So, oftentimes I get calls from my clients and they say, I just got sued. And I would say, oh, you're very, very fortunate. Let's just make a claim under your insurance policy. So why don't you describe what each one of these components of a commercial general liability policy is?
Sure. Happy to run through them quickly. So most people, the most common policy that a business owner is gonna get is just a general liability policy, right? Protects you against bodily injury if you cause bodily injury, or if you cause property damage, also the personal injuries. And most people don't know that a general liability policy actually packages together sort of 5 different coverages. You have your premises liability, right? That's if someone is injured on your premises, just like the example we just talked about. They fell on your premises. You have your operations liability, right? So that insures your operations. If you're a restaurant, what is your operations? It's cooking food. Someone eats your food, they get sick. That's an operations exposure. Product liability, right? If you're a manufacturer and you're creating a product, and that product fails, maybe I manufacture chairs. The chair fails, someone falls out of it, they crack their head. That's a product liability claim. Someone is injured by my product. You have completed operations, right? This is a lot of the times with contractors. They complete their product. Maybe they build a wall. The wall doesn't injure someone, but after 2 years after the project is done, the wall falls down and it injures someone. That's a completed operations. And then you have personal injury and advertising. These are claims like libel, slander, defamation of character, invasion of privacy, copyright, trademark infringement, things like that. So there's a lot of coverage built in to the commercial general liability policy that would protect almost any business.
So, what it's really interesting now that you would talk about trademark infringement, because there have been several cases recently in federal courts around the country that have held insurance companies to pay for the attorney's fees for trademark infringement. Now, you need to be the one who's the infringer and accused of infringing someone's trademark. And if that is covered in your commercial general liability insurance, then you get to ask the insurance company to provide you with a lawyer for legal fees and defend that suit. Or I've have had situations where you say something about someone that may not be true, but you didn't know that, and that comes under the issue of defamation. And if you've got somebody coming up to you, another business, saying you were trying to compete with me, but not really seriously in a fair way, and you defame me, you might look to your insurance policy to provide you with attorney's fees for that. And sometimes the insurance policy will allow you to select your own lawyer. So, you select your lawyer and the insurance company pays for it. That's not so bad, right?
It's a pretty good deal. It's a pretty good deal. They're putting up $1 million of their own money, typically, right, on a commercial general liability policy, providing $1 million for every incident. They're putting up $1 million of their money, and they're asking you to pay, $1,000 in premium, $2,000, $5,000, depending on how big the business is. I think it's a pretty good deal, and specifically to defamation of character and things like that. I mean, how common is that now with Facebook and Instagram? I mean, everyone is online right now, making comments. People are, hey, can you recommend a contractor? Sure, yeah, you use this guy. No, don't use him. He's terrible.
All right, that goes under the homeowners.
So I mean, those claims are certainly occurring out there.
So how do we know what's in each one? if I bought insurance online
Yeah.
through some of I'm not I'm interacting with a robot. How do I know
Yeah.
that my package includes these coverages?
Yeah.
And
So I tell them to read the policy, but you can't. I mean, if unless you're versed in these policies and you understand how to read them because they're written in a certain way, you'll never understand what exactly is covered, what is not covered, what's limited, what there's a condition for, what's excluded. Insurance policies are very, very difficult to read just for the average person who doesn't have a lot of experience reading them. So how do you know? You really have to find an insurance agent or a broker who you trust, who understands you, who understands your business, and can tell you, right? And is going to ask you questions about your business, and who can really give you good advice on what's covered, what's not covered, what's kind of covered, and what's definitely not covered. I mean, it's very difficult for the average person to do it, but which is why my occupation exists, right? They have to find a good insurance agent that they trust.
And actually, in a lot of cases, when we have situations where in the contract itself, it requires the provision of insurance. In manufacturing, in construction, some commonly common types of business where you're subcontracting as a manufacturer of components, or if you're a subcontractor or a contractor. So those contracts you review, don't you, Scott?
Yeah, insurance brokers will often review contracts. We try to narrow it down to the insurance portion of the contracts. If you're going to work with someone and they are saying, I need you to carry X amount of insurance, X coverage, I need to have this endorsement on the policy, that's certainly within the purview of what we do as insurance brokers to read through those contracts. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now I've got 5 in this number, and then we have other types of insurance underneath. So what we're
Oh yeah,
going
there's
to
a lot of
there are a lot of
insurance.
insurances.
Come on.
You know what? There are a lot of insurances, but there's never seemed to be enough because
Yeah.
there's
Good
other
point.
liabilities that are not covered, which I will discuss on another YouTube. But
Yeah.
we have auto fleet liability that covers your fleet of cars.
Yeah, this is just an auto policy, right? It's like, hey, isn't this covered under commercial general liability? No, auto liability, airplane liability, drone liability are excluded from the commercial general liability. So you go out and you purchase a commercial auto policy. It's that simple. That's why it's separated. Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea. If you're a marketing agency and you fly drones and your drone fell down and hit somebody and injured them
Yeah.
because you lost power, whoops,
Yep.
and they sue you if you
Yep.
didn't have that covered, your general liability insurance wouldn't cover you for that.
Yeah, it's a common question I'm asking all my contractors right now because a lot of them are using drones to take
That's right.
pictures of their final projects before
Right.
and afters,
Right.
projects in progress, things like that. I'm always
Yes.
asking, do you have drones? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, your commercial general liability policy specifically excludes aircraft, and a drone is an aircraft. So if that drone, like you said, falls on someone, I've had insureds fly drones into power lines and it started fires. So there's lots of different ways where a drone could cause damage or injury, and you got to be aware that it's not covered on the CGL unless it's specifically endorsed on, or unless you buy a drone liability policy.
That's a really good point, because in the construction industry, drones are used a lot now,
A lot.
and in tall buildings
Yep.
as well, to inspect and to get a better view.
Yeah.
So, with every improvement, there's needs to be a mishap, and then with every mishap, you need to have some coverage for that, but you're not really quite sure
Yeah.
where that coverage is going to come from in case there's a mishap.
That's
And
right.
a drone falling from that high up, you're going to injure somebody really badly. Which brings us to the next issue, which is workers' comp insurance. So you're on a job site, the drone hits somebody beneath who's another employee of a subcontractor while you're inspecting it. And so actually, this is statutorily mandated
Correct.
in all states, right? You have to buy workers' compensation insurance.
I think, I don't know if there's a couple of states that maybe don't, maybe
Really?
Texas.
Not any state I know.
No, no. In the Northeast, it's maybe New Hampshire. You know, live free or die. I don't know.
I think they don't practice there.
Certainly,
Connecticut,
certainly in
Massachusetts.
Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York, and
Yeah.
New Jersey. Yeah.
So with the workers' comp insurance, I think that there's something that I think people don't. This is a really big part of the payroll obligations of employers, and the cost is really high depending on the industry that you're in. So is there, I mean, I know that in the construction industry, they have this pay as you go. Are there different ways that employers can um, sort of reduce the amount of, overhead or improve their cash flow with this type of insurance?
Well, so if you're talking about improving cash flow, yes. I mean, you can the premium for workers' comp is based strictly on payroll and the types of duties that your employees are doing. Typically, we start off and we say, we think we're going to have $100,000 of payroll. Insurance company says, okay, that's 10,000 bucks. Give me 50%, and then you can pay the rest over 10 months, right? With a pay-as-you-go type option, it improves cash flow dramatically, where every week as you're cutting a check, you pay the proportional premium from that payroll. So rather than paying 5,000 bucks up front, you're paying 100 bucks, 100 bucks, 100 bucks, 100 bucks, 100 bucks every single week.
Right.
So that would significantly reduce or improve cash flow for contractors, definitely.
Yeah, so that's a conversation you should have with your insurance broker. So now next we have the professional liability, which I understand very well because I am a professional and I need professional liability insurance.
Yes, you do.
So what are some of the different professional liability insurance, some of the kinds of businesses that would need them?
Yeah, so anyone that generally provides a service for a fee, right, could have an exposure to professional liability. Professional liability does not cover, typically, unless we're talking about malpractice, typically does not cover bodily injury or property damage. It covers financial harm. So if within my business, I make a mistake or an error or misjudgment, and that causes financial harm to my customer, that is where a professional liability policy would really be necessary. So the professional services, obviously, insurance agents need professional liability, attorneys, CPAs. Again, it could be anyone. It could be a hairstylist who needs professional coverage. Manufacturers can, if you're designing products to customer specifications, you might need professional liability. So
doctors or healthcare
doctors, malpractice insurance,
yeah,
malpractice, E&O, professional liability are all sort of synonymous and can be used interchangeably to a degree.
Actually, I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can put it on. Okay, so if you are providing services, and that's something that I think that you should think about foremost, because that's really important to have in case you get sued. So next on our list is umbrella, and sometimes what I'm going to do is also write excess policy.
There you go.
Insurance. So you buy say $1 million worth of insurance, but you're on a $25 million project. It's going to protect you up until that point. So that's how I think business owners should think about excess. It goes above whatever your policy is. Now, what I didn't have excess before, but we're going to dispense with that.
Mhm.
It's often confused with umbrella policy. So could you define an umbrella policy?
Yeah. So an umbrella policy and excess, but I'll speak specifically to umbrella. An umbrella policy simply increases your liability limits. So whereas the commercial general liability, the auto, the professional, they provide the first $1 million of coverage. But if you have significant assets that you need to protect, then an umbrella policy or an excess is going to increase that to 2, 3, 4, 5. So if there's a serious auto accident and there's a $5 million worth of damages, the first million is going to come from your auto policy. The additional 4 million, hopefully, is going to come from your umbrella or excess. Now, to get a little bit technical, umbrellas can be broader than the policies that they cover, right? You think of an umbrella and it's covering like all these other policies underneath it, right? But umbrellas can also be broader. So an umbrella might provide coverage that the liability policy doesn't provide. It might, for example, worldwide coverage. A lot of umbrellas will provide worldwide coverage, at least for the defense costs, in case you're sued in another country. Your general liability will exclude it, but the umbrella will pick up that exposure.
Right. So I think it's really important personally as a business lawyer to tell business owners
Yeah.
that you should have an umbrella policy.
Mm.
And the reason why that's true is when you when you make a claim for it, it might be over the limit. We don't know what that limit is until, say, you have a trial or a settlement, right? You might have $1 million and you're sued for 25 million, but then you settle for, 900,000. You won't need to use that excess.
Mm.
And generally the lawyer who's going to come, the first duty is to the underlying insurance carrier is going to hire that lawyer to sort of defend you. Um, and their position is you're not liable, period. And if you were liable, we would pay for you. That's what your insurance company is going to write you when you make a claim, and they decide that they're going to cover it. And I'll tell you the extent of which they will cover your claim. But there are some things that they won't cover. And in an umbrella, your underlying insurance company will say, we won't cover this claim. And then where you go? If you have excess, you go, well, yeah, I have a lot of insurance that won't cover the claim. But if you go look at your umbrella, oftentimes you will say that we may not cover the claim. Maybe we will, but we may provide you attorney's fees, defense costs for that claim. And then they will, pay your attorney's fees. You could choose your lawyer. You can use one of their lawyers. And then all of a sudden, ta-da, you have someone to defend you and you don't have to worry about your cash flow. So that actually, to me, is definitely worth the money.
It is, yeah, and it's always the first $1 million is the most expensive, right? That's your commercial general liability policy,
right?
Because that's the most at risk, right? Is that first million? Then the second million is less, and the third is less. So it gets cheaper and cheaper, each additional $1 million limit, because it's just unlikely that it's more and more unlikely that a lawsuit is going to reach those limits. It's possible. Yes. But it's that first million that is the most expensive.
Yes.
Yep.
So I highly recommend it to any business owner, having a conversation with it, because the cost of which, and I think that in the mind of a business owner, I'm already paying, say, $10,000 for the general liability. And then I've got the auto, say the auto is going to be another, 10,000. And then you're going to ask me to pay another 2 for the umbrella. Well, that too is going to probably be the best money that you ever spent if you get sued. I'm telling you that right now. That's not a secret. It's really something to think about. So now we're going to go through some of these other very, very niche types of insurances that most people don't really consider. And for some, it's important because, well, let's do with cyber privacy insurance. That's actually much more, I'm going to highlight that, much more important nowadays. So what does that, we did a YouTube podcast on this, but let's cover it quickly. What does that cover?
Yeah, historically, the big concern with cyber was data breaches, right? The Targets, the Home Depot type incidents where hackers would get credit card information or personal information, and all of that would be breached, and there would be harm to third parties. So cyber policies still cover that. That's really more of the privacy liability aspect. Your responsibility as a business owner to protect private information. You have a legal obligation there. More recently, cyber has been making the headlines because of things like ransomware or tax, where a malicious actor will create an email. My secretary clicks on it by accident, and now all of a sudden our computers are frozen and we have no access to any of our customer files. And there's just a little message on my computer when I get in there in the morning. It says, pay us $50,000 in Bitcoin, otherwise we delete everything. That's been happening more and more. I mean, to the point where cyber premiums now are really starting to go up. I mean, they were stable for a long time, but I've noticed just in even the past year, cyber premiums have gone up 40 to 50% for some of my clients.
Yeah,
So,
we're living in a digital world now, right?
yeah.
Everyone, I mean, you're consuming this content on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And you're, um, who knew? I mean, it would pay for all the things that you need to do to get your ransomware, get your stuff back. And, I think in the YouTube that we talked about how paying the bad guys
Yeah.
make you an accessory. That was earlier on.
Yeah, how about
2019 or early 2020 that this happened, which is a little ridiculous, but so it's something to definitely talk about with your insurance broker. So I'm going to actually change this back to black. And so then our next, we have some like real niche ones like liquor liability, right? That covers what, restaurants and
Yeah, so if you manufacture, distribute, or sell alcohol, you need to make sure that you have liquor liability coverage, right? And that covers you, the business, in the event that you overserve someone or you don't check their ID and they consume too much alcohol or any alcohol, and then they go out, they leave the restaurant, and they kill someone because they were intoxicated. So that would be a liquor liability claim, and you'd want to make sure you have the coverage. Again, if you're manufacturing, distributing, or selling alcohol.
yeah. So what I'm going to do actually right now is I'm going to edit and cut this and put cyber liability up here because it's
like
that
it.
important, right?
It's very important. A lot of these depend on what type of business you are, right?
Right.
And if you're a restaurant, liquor liability is very
Right.
important. For me, it's not. If you are a daycare or a library or a physical therapist, the abuse and molestation coverage
Right.
is one
Right.
of your most important coverages.
Right.
It just is. So it really depends on what type of business you are. That's why it's important to find a broker or an
Right.
agent who understands your business, understands what risks you have, and is able to recommend the correct coverages so that you can sleep better at night and so that you're well protected.
So I'm going to do EG.
Yep.
Daycare.
Yeah. Honestly, anyone that interacts with children, I recommend, churches, schools, daycares, physical therapy, massage therapists, libraries, a whole host of different businesses who really could benefit from abuse and molestation coverage.
So talk about niches. We have pollution liability.
Yep. So pollution is excluded from the commercial general liability policy. There's a lot of
Right.
exclusions.
Very big exclusion.
There's a lot of
Pollution.
exclusions on that general liability policy that
Yes.
you have to be careful for.
Right,
Nuclear exclusion, pollution, contractual. So you know, if you cause a pollution event and there's cleanup costs associated with that, or there's damage to a third party, you need pollution coverage, right? Who would need that? Maybe manufacturers of chemicals, gas stations, you know, a lot of contractors really need pollution coverage.
Yeah, people don't think about that because you're throwing things away in the trash and you don't know if you're throwing away asbestos, right?
Absolutely. Mold, asbestos.
Mold, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different, again, a lot of different businesses that could benefit from pollution liability insurance for sure.
So we're gonna, well, here we have two different, well, let's go employee benefits liability. What's that?
Sure. Employee benefits liability, EBL, is if you are providing benefits to your employees, a 401k, health insurance, disability, it covers any mistakes or errors that you make in administering those benefits to your employees. Let's say you forgot to sign someone up for health insurance. They said they wanted to go on. You said you were going to do it, but you just didn't as the employer. That's an exposure you have. And maybe that employee had a huge claim, a large accident that now was not covered.
Yeah, you're actually required under the law as the administrator to pay the claim.
You go, are you really?
Yeah.
You'd have to pay that claim? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you become liable.
Yeah. So if
I'm not an ERISA lawyer, there are certain lawyers that call ERISA employee. I don't know. We call them ERISA lawyers.
Sure.
But I know enough to say that, yeah, when you're a third party administrator handling money, signing people up for benefit, you become liable for the
right. And if you're even more involved in recommending different stocks that they should be investing in, right? I mean, typically they're not, but some businesses are. And really what you need employment benefits, but you also need fiduciary liability, which is your obligation as a fiduciary for sort of taking that extra leap.
That's kind of interesting. Is that a separate policy? So we're going to do fiduciary. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fiduciary up here.
Yep, separate policy from employment benefits. Yep.
This is really interesting because people who are fiduciaries have special obligations for for the work that they do, and such as if you're a fiduciary in holding money,
sure,
in making reports about money, and mostly has to do with money. You think of something other than money? It's your obligation. So a fiduciary actually it means
it's a level of trust, right? It's
the highest level of trust. Exactly.
Right.
Then certain people who are fiduciaries, but it's the work that they do. Lawyers are considered fiduciaries because lawyers are highly trusted, but then they are acting as fiduciaries, say, if they're holding your money, or you say you get involved in an argument with the other side of a lawsuit, and the lawyer holds the money, and then the lawyer decided to spend all the money on themselves, that would be a breach of fiduciary duty. So fiduciary liability follows usually money, highly trusted situations.
Exactly.
Very so I'm putting this right next to directors and officer liability because I think that this flows, right? Because officers and directors are fiduciaries to the companies. So we'll talk about that because it's a different kind of insurance than fiduciary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, directors and officers, most people think about nonprofits, the board of a nonprofit, but certainly there's private company D&O as well. But a directors and officers policy, if you are on a board, a condo board, or on a nonprofit board, make sure that they have a directors and officers policy, because it's protecting the directors and officers individually for decisions that they make while serving on that board. If those decisions have an adverse impact on a third party, financial impact, whatever it may be,
Yes.
those board members can be sued individually, and they need protection, and they'll find it in a directors and officers policy.
Right. And I think that when you're doing that, that, if you're a board of a condo, the condo association, you vote for it, the condo association will buy that insurance so that as a member, you would be covered, and they would have the ability to get a lawyer to defend you for your actions. And that actually happens quite a bit. Also happens in towns with taxpayers and all sorts of malfeasance having to do with this or stuff. And in towns or municipalities, they know to buy this stuff.
Oh,
Unless
absolutely.
they've got so much money, they're self-insured, but they know to buy this stuff.
Right.
Or big companies, they know to buy this stuff. But condos and nonprofits, they don't think about it. Churches don't think about it. It's a different kind of liability from abuse and molestation. One will not cover the other. But oftentimes you want to cover your volunteers, and you want to cover the people who are privately stepping up to act on your behalf, or the employees that are working in your business. You want to do that as well, because if your employee gets sued personally, you're going to they're going to sue you and ask you, hey, I was doing this in the course of my job as an employee. Now I'm doing it for your benefit. You pay for me. So you don't want to have a lot of different lawsuits when you've got a complication. And it covers more than the mishap. So it's different than property and casualty insurance, right?
Yeah, it's different. It's different from property. Well, no, a D&O policy is within the realm of property and casualty. But again, it's honestly like a professional liability policy.
Right.
For boards. It covers their decisions that they make, mistakes, errors in the judgment that could have financial impact.
Right.
Party.
I want to see if I could just maybe what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have some something you can download that will organize it in a better fashion, because as we're talking about this, I'm moving this around. So I've got to delete this. So finally, we have this last one. We have more.
Oh man.
No, but we already covered Jones. Wait. Well, Bailey liability. So we can move that up. We're going to move that up to up here. But so we have employment practices liability insurance. Now, this is a very useful insurance.
Yeah, this one is huge. This one should get moved
up to workers' comp, right? Up there.
Maybe right next to cyber, below or above cyber. It's up to you. You make the call. But employment practices liability insurance, EPLI, it covers you, the business, in the event that you are sued by an employee for a wrongful employment act, right? And when we think of wrongful employment acts, we're talking about, right, you have it right there, discrimination, wrongful termination, harassment, sexual harassment, retaliation retaliation makes up, I think, 50% of these claims. Failure to hire, failure to promote. It even covers the good comprehensive policies even cover third-party harassment claims. So a customer says that they were harassed or discriminated against by one of your employees and they sue you. A really good EPLI policy is going to cover third party as well.
Yes, that's a really, and the prices of those policies have been coming down, right? Because more people.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, no? They're up, Sylvia.
They're up, really?
Yeah, they are. Cyber is up, employment practices is up, directors and officers up. Employment practices is up because I think in large part, well, there's more claims, right? I mean, there just are. There's just more employment claims right now, I think, than there have ever been. And some of that is probably due to things like the Time's Up law in the state of Connecticut, right? Which is
Yeah.
requiring 2 hours of
Yeah,
sexual harassment
right,
training.
right.
It expands the amount that you can get from an employer when you sue them. You know, and it's a, you know, whether or not you think the law is a good thing or a bad thing for businesses, it's bringing attention to the employees. They're going through the training and they're saying, geez, you know, maybe I was actually harassed at work. Maybe that was harassment. Maybe they're not thinking about these things, but when they go through the training, they are. And we're seeing we're seeing a big increase in employment practices claims right now. This is one of the, outside of an umbrella policy, this is probably the second thing I'm talking to my business owners about.
Really?
You gotta understand what your exposure is here, and you should seriously consider purchasing the insurance and transferring that risk to an insurance company. Because honestly, it's going to cover legitimate claims, but it's going to cover false claims too, where an employer says, I did everything right when I fired this person. Here's my document with all the evidence of all the times they were late or they didn't show up. And yet I fired them and they still sued me. They're still going to get defense coverage under that.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's interesting about these lawsuits because anyone can file a lawsuit, especially in the realm of employment practices, because oftentimes you have people who will just file a claim with the CHRO
That's it.
and claim that they have been, I don't know, pick a category, and then off you go. You have to respond to it, and you don't know how to respond to it. Sometimes employers respond to it. Not a good thing, because even between the employee or the former employee and the employer, you don't know what the law is and what they're looking at, and so you end up going into this administrative process, and you need a lawyer, and you would be paying legal fees for that. So
Yeah.
that's something worth considering, because it's very easy to bring a lawsuit, just like it's very easy to bring a lawsuit in personal injury. It's one of these types of laws that some of the personal injury lawyers had crossed over into employment law, because it's kind of similar. You know, your your damages are emotional distress damages, and so they almost treat your EPLI policy like a personal injury policy. And if you don't have one, that's like not having a premises liability policy and someone gets hurt. So all right, I think we only have one left because we got rid of the drone. We talked about drone.
And this is by means, no, it's not it's a long list. Trust me, there's other, I don't want to.
There's so many insurances.
There's more insurance than this out there. I don't want to. I just threw together a list of common insurances. Yeah.
Bailey liability, legal liability. So I give you something. I give you something like my Maserati.
There you go.
And I go,
You're not getting it
Scott, can I have a space for my Maserati while I go away and to the Riviera? And you're holding on to the Maserati.
That's it.
And it gets destroyed because one of your employees decided to go drive it around.
Yeah.
Because it's a Maserati.
Yeah.
And you need to be trained to drive that.
That's right. Yeah. So why does Bailey legal liability coverage exist in the first place? Isn't I damage someone's property, right? I have the commercial general liability policy to fall back on. Nope, there's an exclusion in there for property that's in your care, custody, or control, right? So you gave me your Maserati, that's now property in my care, custody, or control. So now we have to supplement. We found there's the gap. Now we have to replace the gap with the Bailey coverage. So if you're an auto shop and you have customer vehicles in your possession, right, and you're fixing their vehicles, you need bailees coverage, or what we refer to as garage keepers for an auto shop, right? You need garage keepers, legal liability coverage, just in case. What happens if your shop burns down and there's 10 vehicles inside and all those vehicles are destroyed, right? If you are a dry cleaner, another common industry that will have bailee coverage, and you have all this clothing in your care, custody, or control, you need to make sure that you have bailee coverage as well.
You have storage facilities.
Yep, absolutely. Moving companies, right?
Or
Warehouse.
no, even jewelry repair shops, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Or any
Definitely.
kind of repair shops.
Any industry where you're taking in customer goods, right,
Yes,
into your
right.
care, custody, and control. Any industry, you're repairing a chainsaw, right? You're anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, jewelry repairs, repair shop. Okay, well, I think that we've only scratched the surface of all of these. It's just seems like we've got drone on and on about insurance, but
Yep,
but there are a lot of insurances.
there are.
So what is it? How will someone know exactly what kinds of insurances that they need? I mean, what is the process? I know that,
Yeah.
you know, I know so many business owners, and sometimes I move them out of their existing insurance agent to another agent, because what happens is there was a mishap with the agent because they weren't properly insured. And then we'd have to go find some insurance for them. So where, let's say mishaps don't happen and we're starting out as a startup, and I've referred startups to you, where do they begin in working with the insurance agent to decide what kind of insurances they should have?
Yeah. Well, they're, one thing they're probably going to want to look out for and make sure is occurring is that the agent they're dealing with is asking a lot of questions, right? If someone calls me and they say, I'm starting up a auto shop, and I just say, okay, what's the name? What's the FEIN? What's your gross sales? That's it. Okay, I'll go get you a quote. It's not sufficient, right? The agent really needs to ask a lot of questions. Who are your customers? Are you guys storing tires? What kind of repairs are you doing? What kind of cars are you working on? There has to be a lot of questions, because as you can see, there's a lot of different areas where gaps can occur. And the more information you're giving to the insurance agent and that the insurance agent is getting, the better chance that he or she will be able to understand your business, understand what your risks are, what your exposures are, and then find you a suitable insurance program to respond to those risks. And maybe even advise you, you can purchase insurance here, or maybe you can just change this habit with the business, and maybe you won't need it right now because you're just starting out, right? So they just want to make sure that their insurance agent is asking a lot of questions about their business, getting a very good understanding for what they're doing. Maybe they want, a lot of the times no one understands the risks of a business better than the business owner, right? So write down a list of the top 5 ways you could be sued, right? What are the 5 most likely ways I could be sued as a business owner? Okay, write those down, and let's figure out how to insure those to make sure that if you are, there's coverage there, right?
Well, I think that I think the habits thing is, there are 2 things for me as a lawyer that I know. The habits thing is very important, and insurance companies often give free courses for you to reduce that. And will that help your rating? Absolutely, because if you don't have any claims for a long time, you can shop anywhere and get a really, really good quote because you had good habits.
Yeah.
That's part of the underwriting process. The other part of insurance is that, why am I covering it as a business lawyer? Because this is law. This is a way to protect your personal liability. And this is, as a policyholder's lawyer, I'm always looking for insurance. And if you don't have the insurance to look for, my hands are tied. And as you're buying your insurance and you're getting into the project, it's very important for you to let your business lawyer know, because perhaps you can contract a way to
Yeah.
have you added as an insured
Yeah.
with the party you're doing business with. That's something we haven't talked about, but
Mhm.
that's actually a way to pass your liability or to increase your coverage
Mhm.
through the party you're doing business with. And people don't think about this as a an area, because they think about things in different silos, whereas insurance was written by lawyers, it's interpreted by lawyers,
Yes, it is.
it's they fight for it through lawyers. So it's really important to work with your lawyer and your business commercial insurance person to
Mhm.
make sure that you're properly covered, and that your biggest part of expenditure, which is your attorney's fees, is
Mhm.
paid for by
Mm.
somebody else.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's great
thank you
advice.
very much.
Yeah,
This
thanks.
was long, but it was thorough, and I'm sure somebody's
How
going
do
to
you
get.
how do you do a show on insurance that's short? I don't know. If you can
I
figure it
don't.
out,
We can do,
let me
well,
know.
it's a complicated topic and very important one. So thank you for spending the time, Scott.
Thanks very much for having me, Sylvia.
Do, 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 do.